Okay, welcome to MSUA Game Changers webcast, where we speak with satellite and mobile connectivity thought leaders about industry trends and share what you need to know about the future of mobile satellite communications. I'm your host, Roger Lanctot, and I'm excited to introduce Christina Hommes, Marketing Director for Skymira. Skymira is a leader in the land mobile radio vertical, collaborating closely with first responders, utility crews, public safety officers, and the people these everyday heroes serve. Before we dive into Skymira's innovative solutions for coping with emergencies, which we often must contend with during hurricane season here in the US, tell me a little bit about yourself, Christina. What is your
Hi,
background and history in this industry sector and at Skymira?
Hi, Roger. Thank you for having me on. It's great to be with you today. My background is in marketing and communications, where I turn ideas and stories and bring them to life so that people and organizations can find the solutions that they need for their real world problems. I love helping spread the word of how Skymira helps our everyday heroes, like you just mentioned. The people that we count on, help them have communications that they can count on so that whether they're responding to disasters or storms or in their everyday work, that they can know that their communications will go through. As we like to say with Skymira, when you press the push to talk button, your call goes through every time, no matter where you are.
Perfect. At the end of last month, we passed the 1 year mark after Hurricane Helene caused such devastation. What are some of the key lessons it taught us about communications, resilience, and preparedness?
I think Hurricane Helene highlighted a number of things that are really important for disaster hardened communications. In the first place, Hurricane Helene knocked down 3,400 plus cell sites, which is the most of any hurricane, including Katrina and Harvey. And that's not including cell towers, and that's just cell towers. So that is a very widespread problem where a lot of everyday, end users, but also a lot of first responders and public safety and utilities companies had no communications. They were describing it as essentially communications blackout because
Is
they
that
had no
is
communications.
the number of those sites because of the topography of the area?
Probably, partly, I'm sure the further we, get down time, the more there are, but then also it just went into residential areas that weren't used to being storm hardened. So it reminds us that storms can come even where you don't expect them and almost cause more devastation there. So it's important to be prepared even outside of the regular storm corridors.
And so what did we learn from this terrible experience?
Well, I think it really shows us that for first responders working without communications after disaster, they're doing what's already dangerous work in conditions that are even more dangerous than usual. And they're trying to save lives and repair damage, but without being able to call for backup or order medical help or supplies or report on conditions in real time. So they're having to work based on best guesses, which they're really good at, but it's still not the same as having up-to-date information and knowing that they can get back up and call for people to work in the most important areas and report bridges that are out and all those things. So they have to go back to headquarters at the end of the day and debrief and then make guesses for the next 24 hours instead of being able to stay connected throughout the day. In one four co-op region, they had 2,000 contractors and aid workers come in, which was brilliant, but with no cell phone or radio communications, the the processing agents were having to go in person and knock on the doors of local markets and say, I can't pay you right now, but is there any way we could get a flat of water? And they're having to make these creative ways to do things because they have no communications. Whereas if they had those communications, they could respond so much more efficiently and help bring power back, bring save lives, and restore communities.
Wow. So you mentioned a communications blackout that lasted for days in large areas after Hurricane Helene. What does that really mean for the responders working without communications?
It really means that they have these vulnerabilities, that they're trying to save lives, but their headquarters doesn't know where they are. So even if they can't send emergency alerts back, and headquarters can't say, "Oh, that's where you are. We'll send it." They can't say, "Oh, bridge is out here. Send a crew over here." They can't say, "Oh, the line's down over here, or something we can repair more quickly and get a lot of people back online." One electric co-op that has two regions that are just an hour drive from each other, it took them 3 days to be able to check on the other side because they had no communications. So it just really leaves them with vulnerabilities and not able to do their job the way that they want to and the way that they need to.
So it sounds like Skymera was on the ground.
Skymira is yes, Skymira helps provide these communication solutions so that these electric co-ops and police departments and others have communications that they can count on, so that then they do have those real-time communications and that GPS tracking, and they can connect in real time.
I'm kind of a boring suburban boy. What is an electrical co-op?
So an electric co-op is a group that provides electric coverage to a county or service area. And so they will, it's a nonprofit cooperative, and they make sure that residents have electricity. They make sure that the lines stay up or stay buried, that the service is reliable. They get it back up when it comes down. And it's a much bigger project than I realized until I started looking into it. It's very interesting what they do, and it's dangerous. I mean, they're working with electric lines that can be live or not live, and they need to be able to have that real time information to be able to call back and say, is this live line live, or can we work on this without risking our lives?
Now, you suggested that they were a little bit caught off guard by Hurricane Helene, but I think North Carolina is a known an area that's known to be vulnerable to hurricanes. Do they have equipment and material, in place in advance of a catastrophe like this?
Yes, they do. And I was reading the report from one co-op leader, electric co-op leader, and he said we were expecting for electricity to be down for maybe a day and a half, and we would get back up and running. So they are used to certain level of storm damage, but Helene was a much deeper impact, went further into the country than they're used to dealing with. And from what I understand, it covered a much larger area with much more devastation and flooding than than they typically do. So they did a great job. Teams came in, the teams on the ground did a fabulous job rebuilding. But it takes a very long time. And when they don't have the ability to order in the supplies they need because they're cut off for communications and the roads are out so they can only get so far, it just really slows down their efforts.
Well, yeah, I'm sure you're seeing the same scenes that I'm seeing from that area. It still looks pretty devastated.
Yeah.
So what is the role of satellite to address these vulnerabilities and strengthen network resilience?
So the biggest difference with satellite is that satellite is a non-terrestrial based network. So typically, these first responders or electric co-ops or police departments are using two-way radios because push to talk is very simple, it's very robust, it's reliable, and it's rugged. So they can just use it no matter what they're doing. It's very easy. And usually that goes over RF or radio frequency networks, which go over towers a lot like cellular networks, but they have limited range and they are terrestrial. So the towers are on the earth. So when a storm with high winds or ice or a tornado or a hurricane comes through, it can knock down the towers and knock out communications. Whereas satellite, not being terrestrial based, doesn't have those same vulnerabilities. So when you have satellite in addition to your RF or cellular networks, then you're adding a diversity there. That means when the radio and cell towers are knocked out, now you've got a backup network that's still online that keeps your communications running.
So where does Skymira come in? How is Skymira translating satellite capabilities into operational reality for these critical sectors?
Yeah, so Skymira is a systems integrator. We are the link between land mobile radio users with their push to talk two-way radios and satellite networks. Whether GEO, those are the ones that are a long way from Earth, or LEO, those are the ones closer to Earth. And we provide the link so that there's that nationwide satellite coverage for radios. Radios usually go over RF networks, and our ROIP or radio over internet gateways convert those signals over internet so that they can go anywhere, and so that they have that hardening in disasters. Or also in remote areas and rural areas, a lot of these same users that we've been talking about, first responders and public safety, they're working in regions that have areas beyond where it's economically feasible to put up a lot of towers because there's not enough demand. And so with satellite, those areas get covered as well. So wherever they're working, they have communications. And the third benefit is that we connect local, state, and federal responders on site. So when you've had a disaster like a hurricane or an attack, you have multiple agencies and local organizations coming together to respond. And it can be a nightmare trying to get everybody talking and on the same page. Whereas with our solution, you can just plug in a donor radio from each organization, and all of a sudden everybody's talking. So you can keep organization, you can keep efficiency. The setup is quick and reliable. The New Mexico State Police were responding to emergency flooding earlier this year. And even in the devastated area, they were able to use their radios just like usual because of Skymira, even though towers were out. And their radio program coordinator was telling us if we didn't have Skymira, we would have had zero communications. But with Skymira, because of that satellite component, Skymira linked their radios to satellite, and they were able to keep talking and respond efficiently.
Now, what's involved in responding and getting the equipment where it needs to be?
So we provide multiple configurations, Go kits, in-vehicle, and fixed site. And some organizations choose one, some have two, and some have all three. So we can install the equipment directly into a vehicle in a police truck or an electric co-op truck, so that they have this communication network anywhere they go. They have coverage. And then we also have Go kits, which are rapidly deployable, so they can be taken in the back of a vehicle and just plugged into the cigarette lighter and set up on scene and connect multiple agencies or multiple radio systems all in one space. And then our fixed site configuration is for headquarters or the launching pad, wherever that is, to keep them in the loop so that everybody's connected. So it's really a flexible, agile configuration. It's lightweight and it plugs into existing infrastructure. So it's not like they don't have to get new equipment. They can continue using their familiar radios, and we just provide them the extra capability of having those satellite and cellular networks.
Now, if we're talking about Go kits, are we talking about backpack size? Are we talking about more like a good, like an overhead bin kind of, roller bag size? How big are these?
Exactly. They fit in the overhead bin of an airplane. So they can be a carry-on. We do that when we're demonstrating them, and they're a ruggedized case so that they can go into rugged terrain and crisis environments. And they just open up, and you put the satellite terminal on the top of your car, or use the LTE in the modem in the Go kit and plug it into a 12-volt plug, and is plug and play. You plug in your radio, and you're all set up and ready to go. So it's small, it's lightweight, it has wheels, and it's very portable.
And what determines whose satellites you're connecting to?
It depends on what the organization or agency that we're working with needs for their application. So Skymira is manufacturer and network agnostic, meaning we work with any radio, Motorola or Kenwood or EF Johnson or any of the radio brands on P25 or DMR or Tetra standards, and then we can connect them to any network, any internet network. So that can be a cellular network, that can be a private land area network, that can be a satellite network, and that satellite network can either be, Starlink or Kuiper is coming online for the LEO, or Intelsat maybe for GEO, which is further from Earth. So there's different layers, and we can use multiple layers even if they want a very secure, multi-diversified network.
So it sounds like in radio communications, satellite has traditionally been seen as specialized or last resort connectivity. How is that changing, and how is Skymira helping to drive that evolution?
That's a great question and very natural, because if satellite is so effective, why are so few people using it? And I think really it goes back to the history of how satellite has been in communications. There was a time when satellite wasn't a good solution for a lot of communications. It was prohibitively expensive for one thing. It had a lot of lag in the communication times, which made conversation challenging, and it didn't have good audio clarity. And it also required specialized equipment in addition to their regular everyday radios. So those, in the last decade and more, those things are no longer true, but they're still misconceptions that people have because that's how it used to be. And now Skymira is helping connect these satellite networks directly to the two-way radios that these responders use every day. And the latency is on par with LTE, which means that when you press the push to talk button to send a message, the other person is getting the message in about the same amount of time as you would on a cell phone with just a regular phone conversation. And the audio is as clear as a regular radio call. So Skymira is helping to connect these things so that we don't just have specialized equipment. They can have the cost savings and not have the retraining and have the familiarity of their existing equipment connected to satellite networks. And we've made it very affordable so that say an electric co-op has a crew. If they spend 1 hour a month searching for service, that costs them more than a month of connected to satellite where they just would have service and they don't have the backtracking and they don't have all those risks. So a lot of those barriers have been removed, and Skymira has made satellite a very viable option in the radio sector. So I think in the coming years, more than just being adopted, satellite will actually become expected for continuity and reliability. And a recent experience for our CEO, Bob Lansfield, he was meeting with a client in northern Canada, very, very remote. And on his way back, he was in a river canyon between two mountains, and there was no communications coverage. He had no cell coverage, nothing. But using his Starlink satellite terminal, he was able to have a 90-minute engineering call with some of our team. And it got, it broke up a couple times, but he never lost coverage. And that is like, having coverage in that kind of territory is unheard of otherwise. So I think there's hope for responders that they really can get coverage wherever they go. And I think that's going to become expected here in the coming years.
Yeah, it was good seeing Bob at the APCO event in Baltimore a couple of months ago. The world of first responders, public safety. By the way, I'm assuming satellite remains too expensive to outright replace RF.
Well, actually, it's not so much a matter of replacing it. This might surprise a lot of people in satellite, but a lot of times the RF networks are established and they work, and that's not always true. Sometimes they do need to replace altogether, but sometimes satellite is working along with radio and cellular networks. So you're having both in a combined plan. I don't know if you've heard of PACE, which stands for Primary, Alternate, Contingency, and Emergency. The military uses PACE planning for their communications. It's a proven system, and it allows you to have layers of communication networks so that you make sure that it always works. So as part of a PACE plan, you might be using your ARF network and then expand that in urban areas with cellular coverage. And the satellite is going to come in any place that those two don't work. And with Skymira's equipment, we have network redundancy and automatic failover so that you're automatically switching behind the scenes to whichever network works for you. And the first responder or whoever's using the radio doesn't even know what's going on. They can focus on their job. So it's something they use every day. They're not having to dust it off and remember how it works in an emergency, and it's a cohesive plan. So yeah, satellite is not necessarily going to replace the other two, even though in some cases it will. It's often going to work alongside.
I always learn things whether I'm talking to you or Bob. So thank you for that, Christina. I was not familiar with PACE. So thank you. So from your perspective, what are first responders, utilities, and public safety users really looking for when they consider satellite to harden their communications?
I think largely they're looking for three things. They're looking for reliability. They just want their communications to work. They already have networks that work a lot of the time. They're looking for something that works everywhere. They want security. They have regulations and standards that they have to meet, and they're looking for integration into their existing system. They don't want new specialized equipment. Some of the sat phones in the past would sit on a shelf and get dusty, and then there was an emergency and they'd have to dust them off and make sure they still work and hope they remember how they do. Whereas in this case, one of our people that's using Skymira says it's like an insurance policy you use every day. It's filling in those coverage gaps, and at the same time, it is giving you that hardened communications for a disaster. So to make that possible, satellite providers need to work closely with integrators like Skymira, who are targeting a vertical like land mobile radio users, and we know what the customer needs. So there's little things. I'm sure each industry has their own, but for radio users, a lot of them need bulk licensing to fit with their budget requirements and grant funding. They need to provide access to accommodate security requirements so that Skymira can provide those compliance measures that our customers are looking for, especially our federal government customers, and coordinated quality support support so that they can have communications they really can count on and issues get resolved quickly. So I would say those, the reliability, the security, and the integration are really the biggest things end users need when it comes to satellite coverage.
So let's talk outcomes. What are the real world results of disaster proofing communications with satellite?
I think the biggest one is safety for the workers and for those that they serve. They can call for backup, they can get medical service, they can get people evacuated if necessary. But it also leads to faster response and recovery to disasters like Hurricane Helene and the flooding in New Mexico. And the faster they can respond, the faster they can get people's lives back to usual. It also provides cost savings with coordinated efforts, less wasted time, and reduced backtracking. And it supports our everyday heroes. These people are putting their life on the line to make our lives better. And it's something we can do to make their lives better and their jobs safer. So for radio users, I hope it gives them hope that it's possible to keep their communications connected after storms and disasters so that they can save more lives and rebuild more quickly. And for satellite providers, I hope it gives them insight that they really are helping to save lives and make life better for first responders and everyday people that they serve. They're several steps removed, so maybe they don't always get to see the impact they're having, but I hope this gives them an insight into how their technology is saving and improving lives every day.
I should have prepared you for this, but I'll just ask off the cuff. Do you have some stories, examples? Sort of those heart tugging personal accounts. Where this kind of communication has come and saved the day.
Absolutely. I was mentioning earlier in New Mexico with the flooding, that police department was able to go in and they were able to have communications so that they could rescue people more quickly and know which areas to go into and have a coordinated response. We have a electric co-op, Missoula Electric Cooperative, that we've actually written a case study with not too long ago, and they, I think there was a tornado in the next county over, and Missoula Electric Cooperative went over there and brought their Skymira communication equipment and had everybody talking so that they could, repair power lines and get power back on for people. Because for most of us, it's just an inconvenience when we don't have power for a while. But for people with, oxygen machines and other medical devices and things, it can be a life, a life or death situation. And so by having the communications that we had provided to the one county, the other county was able to kind of link into that, and everybody was able to go and get the electricity back on a lot faster thanks to that.
Well, we've got Tropical Storm Jerry off the coast of Virginia right now, and let's just hope that it goes back out to sea and doesn't bother us too much. So if I'm looking for more examples, case studies, stories about the impact that Skymira is having, where can I get that information?
You can find us on our website, skymira.com, where you'll find insights into land mobile radio and satellite and the convergence between the two, and see shifts in the industry and what's coming next. And we also educate people on, why it matters and what is really a quality solution and how they can implement one. And you can also follow us on LinkedIn, where you can stay up to date with what's happening and see what's interesting in the land mobile radio and satellite worlds.
Okay, that's excellent, Christina. I'm gonna take us out. Thank you for taking the time today. I want to thank the Mobile Satellite Users Association for hosting these sessions. You can learn more about the MSUA at msua.org. You can learn how to get our weekly newsletter that gives you updates on everything that's happening in the industry and shares information about upcoming events. If you want more information about Skymira, that's skymira.com. And you can also find out how to become a member of MSUA at the msua.org website. We look forward to seeing you next time on MSUA's Game Changer webcast. Thank you very much.